Yes, I'm Pete Smith.
And we have found ourselves a veritable amount of kit because now we're pretending that we're real broadcasters. That's why we're stuck with these new, very all singing and all dancing microphones. I don't know what they are. Mr. Pedros over there decided to get them.
Yes.
But
road broadcasters.
I think we're fancying ourselves as professionals these days.
Apparently they have pop mics within the mic, so let's see.
Yeah.
If we get rid of the S's and the P's and the O's.
Hopefully our 9 listeners will enjoy the fact that there's getting qualities. Yes, I've roped in the neighbours. And a small dog.
What sort of dog?
It was just a small one. It was a nondescript small dog.
Right, okay.
Not like our purebred ones.
I know. We have a thing for dogs. Well, I didn't have a thing for dogs.
I've never really had a thing for dogs.
No.
But we've ended up with 3.
Yeah.
But chihuahuas are very hard work. I'm just warning you, don't get a chihuahua if you want to have an easy life. They're absolutely awful.
Yeah, I found out this morning that our chihuahua, the elder one, the boy, has been using everywhere as a toilet.
Yeah, so that's nice. In our new house, we're really happy with that. And he's actually currently having sex with the bigger dog's head. So if you can't see that, you're not invited to the joys of vision, but that is actually happening right now in front of me to the left of me. So it's slightly unnerving, slightly upsetting, but she seems fine with it. And that's the thing. #MeToo. If you're, he's really going for it now.
Yeah, it's like head rape.
Wookie, just stop that. Don't look at me with those big brown eyes like it's completely normal what you're doing, because it's completely unnatural to be doing that to anybody's head.
Yeah, I don't think
Wookie, stop it. Yes, Poppy. That's right. Wookie is abusing your head.
Terrible.
#the life of dogs.
Isn't it? I feel like we're on the full radio or something here.
I know.
Brilliant.
It is really good.
Yeah.
It's just me and you in the kitchen as ever, but never mind.
It is.
So I've been thinking about things in the last few days based on the fact that I did this morning yesterday and was coming up to doing the phone-in on addiction. And a lot of people got in touch. Actually, I recommended a treatment called Smart TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is a non-invasive and non-prescribed like medical treatment regarding tablets, medication. But it's really effective for dealing with addiction. Not heroin, ironically.
Oh, isn't it?
No, coke, crack, things like gambling, meth, yeah. Really, really effective. About 70% of people are what we'd consider without symptoms at the end of it, 4-week period.
What about food?
Well, again, they've not really tested a lot with food. They think there's a possibility that it could work with food. They're just working on smoking now, so dealing with cessation. Yeah.
That's a big one, that.
It's expensive,
Well,
though.
I'm not saying that the others aren't big. I mean, any addictions just...
Yeah, they are big. They are big, but heroin it isn't working with. And they got like loads of phone calls yesterday after the show because people are desperate with their addiction. And it just started to get me thinking about the times that me and you talk about addiction and growing up and the kind of places we came from and the lives that we had there. And also our personal experiences of living in small towns and being surrounded by pretty heavy drug culture.
Oh, huge.
Yeah, and also where we and our paths ended up compared to some of our comparatives, I suppose.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people don't realise is that when you, from what I've found out anyway, from living in Manchester now, people live in the city. Obviously, there's inner city kids and there's the areas around, you know, it's always there to around the city. You've got somewhere to escape to within the city, or you can go, there's a lot more going on in London, Manchester, Birmingham. But then when you get into, you see, I'm from a place called Saltburn, which is on the northeast coast, which you know, and it's an unbelievably beautiful place.
Yeah, pretty little market town.
I mean, I'm originally from Middlesbrough, which is, you know, I didn't have a tough upbringing. My parents were absolutely fantastic as a kid. The area where I lived, though, there was a lot of violence, a lot of fighting. It was like running the gauntlet for a long time. You know, we lived in a nice area of sort of Eston and Middlesbrough, but there was areas where it was literally, you know, you got your doorstep and you know that at some point someone's going to start wanting to attack you.
Yeah, you said you fought all the time, didn't you? Just had fights all the time.
Yeah, you don't realise now that you look back and some of your peers at the time who you thought were coping as well were getting sort of involved in getting attacked and stuff too from throughout school. But I moved from Eston in like third year, senior. What year is that now? Like year 10?
That
year
was
9?
so crazy. You were sent back to your school in Heston, though,
Mm.
for a year.
Yeah, I thought it
like
was.
hours away.
The teachers and my parents thought it was all round, be good just
Why did
to get the bus, which took an hour and a half in the morning and then an hour and a half, 2 hours in the evening.
Why do parents do that?
They just, I don't know, the teachers.
My parents made me stay at my senior sixth form, and I hated school. And they agreed with the psychologists and the teachers that it would be better for my consistent care if I stayed at the place I hated.
I think they underestimated the journey.
Of course you didn't.
And my schooling from when I moved and kept going to the same school, my education went
down.
Like wasn't just down. It was sort of up there in the top maths group. I was really top footballer in the team, and outside of the team, I was a break dancer. I was an artist. I was one of those people that still am, that I like to just do everything, try everything, and it just went all the way down. Literally started fighting, even more so. So I was literally scrapping almost every day. You
got horribly bullied though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It's fair to say, I don't think those bullies are really doing anything anymore. So
no,
so it goes to show that most of the time bullies don't really end up anywhere.
But you weren't like somebody who was bullied and took it. You fought back constantly. So I think that's a different kind of experience, in the fact that even though you were really badly bullied on a physical level by groups of boys, because you fought back, you never necessarily interpreted it that much as bullying. You kind of took it more as scrapping, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a lot of scrapping.
It's only on reflection that you can kind of say, well, there were loads of lads coming after one person. And
yes, I got a good kick in quite a bit,
and that's what led you to becoming so violent in your own life, wasn't it?
It did, yeah. It also, so when we moved to Saltburn, I can only describe it as, it was like landing in a whole new world of what was me.
Yeah.
Because I was into sort of breakdancing, amongst other things, the sort of graffiti element, the sort of the subcultured hip hop. And not many people of my age around that time in the Heston and Middlesbrough area it wasn't even
on the radar.
Yeah. And I moved to Saltburn, and it was like every kid there that I ended up getting involved in, annoying and becoming really good friends with, and still am, were into hip hop, and they had connections to sort of London and Ireland, sort of some of the hip hop guys over there. And it was just, they were all at the graffiti, they were out, before I even moved there, they'd been out doing graffiti and stuff, so it was just nice, and getting a knock on the door from people saying, do you want to come out and chill, and I was only young, never really drank alcohol, never done anything, and that's when it started to become really interesting.
I remember those days when people used to knock on. What's happened to that? My kids would never, our kids would never leave this house and be like, there's a new kid on the block. Let's go and knock on and call them out. Like, I can remember that happening all the time. Like, you just go to the door and there'd be some random kids be like, coming to play out. Yeah. You'd be like, yeah, I'll get my coat. And then you'd like be best mates for like 3 weeks and then you'd never see them again. I can remember meeting probably my home best friend, because I had like a best mate when I was a kid called Colette, and she was just like the coolest kid. She was like my pre-under 11 best mate, and I came from a small place like you did. She knocked on the door one day. I was 7 years old, and she asked me out to play, and that was it. She was just like my best mate for years. And then one day, as they did in the like 80s, they don't tell you that things are about to change. Suddenly my parents said, Colette's not going to be living there. Her dad's been made redundant, and she was gone. That was it. I never saw her again. Literally never saw her again. And it was like heartbreaking. And it took me quite a while to get back on my feet in that context. And then 13, I was on a bus. Back in the day, I was a little bit naughty and I was up to things that maybe I shouldn't have been doing. I was heading off on my own to Bury, the bright lights of the city. Our local place, Bury. Big deal, though, when you're a kid, going on your own. I used to just go for a wander. And this kid sat at the back of the bus and she's smoking a fag and she's wearing kind of quite towny. That's the context I'd dress her in, towny clothes. And she's like eyeing me up and down, Another kid about similar age. And then she kind of puts her head back and she's like, so what are you doing? I was like, I'm just going into Bury. She's like, you want to go with me? I was like, yeah, go with you. And boom, that was me and Gemma Matthews until we were 17 years of age, became really close friends. And there was another girl as well, Janie Nightingale. But basically, that's how I met my mates. Janie Nightingale, I gate crashed a party. I can still remember this. This is hilarious. I was so weird. I look back and I'm like, I mean, part of it would have been in my pain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Part of me was pain and I needed to do things to distract myself from my personal pain. I would, as a young teenager, like I had fake ID. So as our kids know, I used to be head librarian. Very lucky when I was a kid. I had a teacher who, in spite of me being a problematic student, really believed in me. Mrs. Skinner, she's dead now. She died just over a year ago. She's one of the most incredible teachers. I think anybody who met her, if you were a kid like me, if you were a bit difficult, if you were a bit challenging, but you had a big mouth, she just saw that there was something in you. And actually, a young woman got in touch with me not so long ago on Facebook. She was asking me about programming. She said, I feel that you went there. And I was like, yeah. She was like, I went there. And we ended up having this conversation, and she'd had exactly the same experience with Mrs. Skinner. Mrs. Skinner had singled her out in all of her pain and just looked after her and made her feel valuable. And when they say that there's a teacher who changed your life, no, Mrs. Skinner is that teacher. Mrs. Kerr secondary, but Mrs. Skinner made me feel like there was hope. And yeah, basically, I kind of would go and hang out in those days and try and gate crash parties because I would be head librarian and have made fake ID. Used to sell my fake ID for £1 at the interchange. They were very good. They were very well done. And I would go to parties. So I was in the pub one night, probably about 16 at the most, probably coming up for 16 at least. And I got my fake ID and I'm on my Nuki Brown Ale, which I hated, but everybody else seemed to drink it. And I didn't even have friends there. You know, I was just going in on my own. So weird. Sitting around with this group of kids, and I hear this girl saying, oh, there's a party down in Bury. So off I go, following them. I'm going to follow them. So I get on the bus, and I follow them. I literally follow a group of kids I don't know. I don't have anything to do with them to Bury. I follow them round the back of B&Q, and it turns out there's a party on at this guy called Mick Gibson. Never met him in my life, right? So I just hang back with these kids, and as they go in, I go in with them. And that's how I met Janie Nightingale, who became, she's a pretty incredible woman, actually, Janie Nightingale. She's got such an interesting story. She'd be interesting to get on here. And she's there, drunk out of her mind, falling across the thing, kind of connect with her, hang out with some guys that then become my friends in the end. And the next day I meet her on the bus, and again, we became really good mates. How kids don't do that anymore. That's how you connect, isn't it?
It's a social media. It's the immediacy of the technology that we have now, isn't it? It's,
maybe that's it. Maybe they just know everyone.
Yeah. I remember getting, I've explained to you before, organising to go to the cinema, travelling for ages, getting there, waiting for like 2 hours for no one to turn up, like to meet me, to go into the cinema. And I didn't know, so then I just trundled off home, tail between my legs, and then give them a call from home, because that's the only time you got a phone, if you're allowed to use it, because it costs loads of money. But nowadays, it's just, you just text or Facebook.
Sorry.
You're joking, are you all right?
No, I've got this really bad cold, haven't I? Just to add to that, the story doesn't end there. The story is that you rang him up, threatened him, and then when you saw him the next time, you punched him in the face.
Yes.
Don't stand me up, bitches.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had a few situations like that.
Peers was so important, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole sort of... sorry, the dog's
That's
got
our
an
dog.
itchy ear.
She's itching her ear.
So, moving to Saltburn, for me, it was because Saltburn's sort of the end of the railway line.
You call it the vortex.
Yeah, a lot of people call it the vortex. A good friend of mine, John McGough, I think, came up with that. He's he came up with the Saltburn vortex, and he wasn't there for a while, and now he's there again. So yeah, it must be a vortex. But it is a beautiful place. It is, it's a very small town. Everybody knows everybody's business, and if you're all right with that, it's fine. I like sort of Manchester now. I like to go and be, in a sort of more city. But you do miss it a little bit. But I've like lately, because I'm sort of getting to that middle age thing now. That's what you're doing. 40, 45. Sort of. How old am I? 43.
28. 28. I'm 27.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm 28. So in 20 years time, you start having this sort of nostalgia and things that you think about the people, and the friends that you had, and what? Excuse me, I'm choking now. And why they disperse. And then I look into Saltburn, and actually quite a lot of them are still there.
But I think that's to do with when you are young, you just have no value for things. Like I look back, some of the really good friendships that I had no value for them.
Yeah.
I just expected that it always keep happening because my life had always exampled that. So, you know, you met people on buses, you met people on trains, you met people in nightclubs, suddenly hanging out with them. I didn't know that when you started work and you weren't socialising like that and people started having kids, I didn't know that that meant that you just didn't keep those friendships. So I didn't value them enough to kind of keep them pursued.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you know, you're looking for people on Facebook, hoping that you might be able to find them. And I don't know what it is about some of my past contacts. They've not bothered with social media. Probably dead, if I'm honest. Yeah. But, you know, they're not there. I can't find them. I can't reconnect with them. And it's that nostalgia. That's what you're talking about. It's the fact that all of a sudden you get to our age and you're like, these people had great meaning.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know these people had great meaning, but they had great meaning. They unfolded my story. They added to my story. They gave me guidance and support. You know, those cups of tea over, you know, a cigarette or a spliff, you know, those kind of conversations when you were a kid, and you just had no sense of value for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been sort of in the past couple of months looking on Facebook, finding people that I used to know, whether if there's been it's sort of gone separate ways because of issues or whatever, which you just look back and you think, well, what was the point in that? What was the point in that?
What was the argument about?
Yeah, these people were huge to my story, you know, and I don't understand why I'd just let them just not so much being involved in their life, but knowing that the string of connections is still there with them because they're part. And you know what? I think I've been finding out really from some of the sort of social media elements and posts and stuff that a lot of people of my age and around the sort of age group are feeling quite similar.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, and it's nice in a way because, you know, you're not by yourself in your memories, because your memories, it's like a film, isn't it, in your head, you know, and the memories to me, it's like watching it through a camera, you know, and wishing that you could have captured them in some other way than just your memory. You
wish you could go back to those moments, those parties, those conversations right now in the blink of an eye with all the things that you know now, where you've got so many responsibilities that those tiny things that used to really annoy you about people are so minuscule in comparison to what really matters. That the things that you were so unforgiving about, like I would be unforgiving about the way somebody looked at me. If I thought absolutely. You looked at me, like I can remember like having rows with girls and guys about like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
And like that kind of tone, you know, what are you looking at? And there'd be people that you kind of got on with, but you know, you'd have had a little bit too much to drink, or you might be under the influence of something else, and suddenly you don't want to speak to them anymore. And then thank God there wasn't any social media back in the day, because I think the damage that I could have done and you could have done with our feelings, because we were both very reactionary. I'm not reactionary anymore. That's not who I am. And you're definitely getting better at being less reactionary.
Yes.
But I've learned that doesn't work for me. But I learned too late. You know, I fractured relationships, and those relationships were fractured in return by people. And I think when I look back, I'm like, wow. I look back actually at my first marriage. And me and my ex-husband got married just because we were mates. Excuse me, are you on? You know, we were just mates.
Yeah.
Keeping it real. Facial expressions of yawning included if you're watching us on the YouTube. Yeah, if you're not just listening to this on a podcast and you're watching me on YouTube, I apologise for my facial expressions in advance.
It's called hardly having any sleep because we're working on
I got up very, very early and had a very long day yesterday, filming a lot. That sounds really glamorous, doesn't it? It wasn't glamorous. Anyway, coming back to that kind of thing about the choices that you make when you're young, I think back to my first marriage, and my first husband and I, you know, get on now. We were just mates. We just didn't know what we were doing, where we were going. And to be honest, we didn't really leave the house very often as best mates. We were just always in together, hanging out. And so we kind of got married thinking that it was never going to happen any other way. And I don't have any regrets about that. I've got two amazing boys, you know, from that marriage. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't have had them otherwise. But I can remember the arguments that he and I had. They would like be so off the chart when we were younger, things that had really no meaning, tiny little things that you'd be peed off about, you would blow into these ridiculous arguments, you know? And it would get to an escalation point, you know, we'd have 3 or 4 days where we wouldn't even speak to each other. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Everything seemed to have so much more meaning when I was younger.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I remember people in jobs saying to me, one day you'll realise that you're being idealistic. And I used to look at them and think, you are such a wanker. You don't have any reason to patronise me in that way. I know what my ideals are. And now I hear it differently. I think what they were saying is the things that you have such ultimate meaning over when you're young will dissipate and become more normalised. You know, you won't feel as aggressive about holding on to some of those feelings. And I definitely don't. I'm so much more kind of moderate and I suppose boring as well. You know, I'm quite like boring and I get excited about the idea of doing up a bathroom. You know, I can spend nights in bed thinking, oh, I'm going to paint my hall and I'm really excited about it. And it's ridiculous.
I get
it's
excited.
ridiculous.
I just get excited over,
We're like, we've got a big garden. We're going to grow veg. It's going to be the good life. We're probably never going to have to shop at a greengrocer's again.
Life is like a butterfly. Oh, got a cold there, love.
Oh, God, don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I get excited over anything, I always have done, really, I think. Quite an excitable character. I'm like a puppy.
Yeah, you are like a puppy. The thing is as well, though, it's part of, like, holding on to things that matter as well, because, like, the thing about being, like, older is that you don't want to internalize everything, so it's all about you and your kids and your family. You know, there are such bigger issues that we want to be present in, but you're kind of constantly battling against the ordinariness of life. You know, they're kind of getting on with the everyday things. And like, there's a part of me that kind of goes, oh, one day when I retire, I'm going to be able to do A, B, C. And you don't want to live in that future focused perception. You don't want to do that. Because in my head, I'm still going to go and live in a New York apartment and like live a friend's life. That's what I'm going to do. Because in your head, you've still got those ideas like we were talking about with the rock star situation. You still have those feelings, don't you? That's something that you can just hold on to. But when I look back now, definitely the nostalgia is all around those connections that were very much around recreational drug use and hanging out with each other. And the difference between, I think, my experiences and your experiences is when I was a kid, heroin really didn't play a part in the culture that I hung out in. It just didn't, you know?
Well, I mean, in Saltburn, it didn't for a while. It was, a good few years of recreational drug use. I mean, I'd never really drank or done anything really. And the first experience I had of that was, I had a huge handful of magic mushrooms,
Good old psilocybin.
Yeah, and that was when I was 16, maybe, something like that. And then it was just, it became part of everyday life for me, recreational drugs, really. I went to art college. So that was, and a lot of my friends went to art college as well. So it was still the same crew. We were into hip hop and, we were like a gang, really, without the sort of like criminal ties where you go out doing stuff like that. It was just more of this huge crew.
I think you'll find recreational drugs in the 80s were extremely illegal, Mr. Smith.
Well, it was more of a squad, really, and we'd like free. Yeah, it was like I mean, there's a few of us, and the Saltburn Aerosol squad, and that was
We were really opening the ad uniforms and everything.
We were literally. It was like we were living in sort of America, and it was like but it was really, we were all into the real sort of gritty hip hop, from Gangstar through to even like Onyx, watching it in new MTV Raps. We all thought we were these hip hop dudes. We were really, but we just weren't from the ghetto, and these lads, these girls and lads, and they were just brilliant kids. We were all just, and there was in circular scrapping and arguing and stuff all the time, like you get that, but generally everybody. It must have been a big wide circle of over 200 people, really, who knew each other, who had varied parties, and it's quite insular in Saltburn, and everybody likes to. I mean, for the size of the place, there's something like 20 odd pubs,
Yeah.
And all live music, really decent. But there's so many cultures there. I mean, growing up there, you had you'd have rastas, you'd have
punks.
Huh?
You'd have punks, wouldn't you?
Yeah, punks, punks. Yeah, I mean, I used to
goths. Still
I mean, the
that.
goths, punks, rastas, all the hippies.
They're still there.
All the arty types.
It started with a twig.
It started with a twig.
Private joke, but it has meaning.
And everybody sort of got on, and at one point, some people came back they must have been in London or working somewhere, and they came back with heroin. And at the same time, there was some of the punks that were using it up in Newmask, which is another place sort of near Saltburn.
And you left home at 16, didn't you?
I did. I left home at 16. I went and lived
young.
Newmask, and it was a very, very, very hedonistic house that I lived in. And on the corner was the punks and the rastas, and it was just there was various blues parties going on in various places, and it was hardcore, and it got to a point where it really was hardcore. There was, there was speed, ecstasy,
acid,
lots of acid.
Yeah, acid is a big one, wasn't it?
I mean, what it was is Saltburn, because it was near the end of the track. It was like whatever was in, whatever you could get. If you couldn't get any weed, you'd go and get some speed. If you couldn't get speed, you'd go and get LSD. If you couldn't get LSD, you'd go and see if you picked any mushrooms. So it was quite, and it was, but it was all recreational. It wasn't even at the point where it was any cocaine or anything like that was involved. Nothing like that. It was all just
coke wasn't around really, was it?
It wasn't. It was known as something. You'd see it in like you'd looking like
you'd see it in yuppie films.
Yeah,
and stuff,
yuppie films or sort of New Jack City. You'd see ice like a form of coke, and you'd see
speed was the kind of thing that was local, wasn't it?
Yeah, speed with LSD and even ecstasy before that. That's just started to really
ecstasy
come in.
Ecstasy was the 90s. Yeah, really.
Yeah. And that was sort of the early 90s.
Yeah, the 80s were more acid, mushrooms, weed,
and so like
speed.
It was just, but then this heroin started trickling in, and some of the guys that you would have thought would have known a little bit better because of the parenting and the parents in the background and stuff,
Well,
not saying that they knew better, but I mean...
No, I think it's okay to say that. I think my kids know better. Our kids know better, but it doesn't stop you from having peers, and peers are the power. See, that's the irony. When I think about my kids... We look at our boys, and I know right now that they are not taking any drugs, and we know that. One, because of our really clear and open communication with our boys. That's number one. But secondly, they don't leave the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That it's winter, it's cold, I'm comfortable at home.
I like to think that we used to call it, you know the score.
That was like when we were like, when I was 12, I was out.
Yeah.
That was what I was like.
We'd be able to tell, our parents, my parents, I'll get onto it in a minute, but we'd be able to tell if they were taking...
Absolutely. My God, if they walked in with their eyes.
We know the score about it,
I can remember.
We're educated, we've
absolutely.
been there.
I can remember when I was pregnant with my first son. So I was pregnant with my first son. And I went into the doctors, don't know what was going on. Obviously something going on with me. My mum was with me, she'd come with me. I was sitting in this emergency doctor's. These parents walk in with this kid, right? And this kid looked no older than 16. And I look at him and he's got the fear badly. Nice. I mean, he has got the fear in tons, right? And I'm looking and these dead middle-class parents.
So when you say the fear, it changes in different areas, you see. It means he's on a downer.
Massive. Yeah. The fear is there. He's got the paranoia. Yeah. He thinks he's going to die. He can feel it. Yeah. He doesn't even need to open his mouth. And his parents walk over to the desk and they're explaining to the woman on the desk that he doesn't know what he's taken, but he's taken something. And the woman on the desk, bear in mind, this kid is desperately.
Well, that's what I was like
fear,
the first time I ever did.
Right, yeah. The woman goes, you need to take him to hospital. And I literally said to my mum,
well, that's the best thing to do, isn't it?
I said, Mum,
best thing to say, in fact.
I said, I'm just going to get up now, Mum. Yeah. So I waddle over and I just go to the lad and I get the lad and put my hand on his shoulder and I look at his parents and I go, he's having a bad time. He's probably dropped a pill. I said, he's going to be absolutely fine. I said, you know what you need to do, sweetheart? I said, you need to stop worrying about this feeling because it's going to end. I said, but Mum and Dad, I said, you're going to take him home now. I said, on the way. You're going to go to Tesco, you're going to get some pure orange juice,
some vitamin C.
I said, get as much vitamin C in him. I said, then you're going to go home, put him in a dark room with a bit of subdued lighting, put some trance tunes on, and just be with him, stroking his head, telling him it's all right. I said, and I tell you what, it's going to be absolutely fine. And the kid grabbed me and went, thank you. And I went, just get him home now. And the parents were like, thank you. And I was like, I saw and felt it for him.
Well, it's just that, the woman standing behind the desk saying, she might as well just said to him,
you're going to die.
Yeah, you know what you need to do, son? You need to go home and cut one of your own arms off. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You're going to go to hospital. They're going to arrest you. You're going to go to prison.
They're going to chop the back of your head off and scoop your brains out, and you're going to be locked up for the rest of your life. That's what you're going to hear.
That's what she was going to hear. Yeah.
You're going to have a criminal record. You're going to die. Everything's going to eat you. It's just.
I had a friend who took, let's say, a substantial amount of mushrooms one day and was found somewhere and ended up in hospital. And when he woke up a couple of days later, in and out of consciousness, he thought he died. And then when he finally realised he was in the hospital, he read the actual thing on him and it basically said he was a drug abuser.
Oh, dear.
And it was just, he said he felt like everybody was just shaking his head and pointing at him.
Well, this is like, goes back to the story of when I lived in Saltburn, and there must have been between 50 and 100 young people out on the night that I first ever did magic mushrooms. and literally over half of them had done them. You know, and literally, you know, and it was this big batch of them that were so strong as well. You know, so for not even drinking or anything, everything mind altered. I mean, I thought I died. People were in the woods, half naked, eating trees. You know, it was like, I thought I was in some sort of haunting.
I've never got past the one where you told me that a guy ended up just arriving half naked.
Yeah,
on
that
a
was the
horse.
night. Yeah, with a stick in his hand, like smoking it. You know, like it's all right, everything's all right, I'm all right, and then just disappears, covered in mud, back again. You know, and everybody the morning after. I worked in the health food shop in Saltburn, and I was, you know, people would come round and were like, "You all right, Pete?" Like, well, I feel all right. No, because those days you were a kid, nothing ever fazed you afterwards. You know, it was just like, and I must admit, from my experience with taking anything like that, from then on, was absolutely fine. It was like, it was just this initiation period of thinking I was dead, I was haunting, I was literally on a loop.
Didn't you ween?
Weed in the bedroom, yeah. I thought I was in. One minute I was just in the bedroom, and I was like, then it was a toilet, and I was like, brilliant, didn't even move. I had a friend who was staying with me, and he went downstairs twice and came back up the stairs, and I heard like dum 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 up the stairs. Door open, picked me up, slapped me on the face, up against the wall, saying, "You're all right. Come on, get yourself together. Get yourself together." Happened twice, not in my head. It happened every 10 seconds. On a loop, every 10 seconds he was coming up and doing that to me, you know. And then it was just like, I couldn't believe it. I literally, when people say that you're in another dimension, that's what it was like. And you know, that was because it was such an insular town and everybody was new to it. Everybody did it, you know, and that was my sort of gateway into sort of like seeing what drug use is all about, you know. But the heroin thing was. It became a huge issue because, and I think it's quite the story that I'm telling now about the small towns, and I think there's going to be a lot of that around the UK. Well, you know, across the world, but I'm talking about the UK now, and I think there's a lot of towns that it's happened to where drugs can take over, but once.
Boredom, isn't it?
Well, once a real drug takes over, like a lifestyle, you know, like I'll say a real drug.
No, I mean
a heavy sort of, you know,
addiction.
like heroin is. I mean, people understand what I'm saying. Like when I say that heroin isn't just a thing that you do and you get on with it. You know, heroin users say that, but it's not, because it becomes your life. It's your lifestyle is as a heroin addict. You know, and
everything
so
becomes about the hit,
sat around
doesn't it?
and I was watching a lot of my really close friends chasing the dragon with the foil. You know, and you know, they'd be sat there. I'd be sat there with a spliff or some drink, you know, and I knew in my head not to do it, you know, and just seeing them sort of, and I was just like, this is not going to end well. I used to remember, you know, and gradually, bit by bit, you'd move away from, you know. And
in the 80s, they had massive campaigns. I mean, I remember the Just Say No campaign. Yeah. I remember the black and white images of the guy in an alleyway with a needle sticking out of his arm. I remember the picture of the dead girl.
Yeah.
To me, when people talked about heroin, they were talking about destruction.
Yeah.
So because I had that really powerful imagery in my mind, and even though I'm sure that people around me who I was at parties with and I was hanging out with and who were taking recreational drugs, yeah, I'm sure that probably a minority of those became dependents.
Yeah.
But I never knew any of them. I heard about one guy who was meant to be a dependent. He died, actually.
Yeah, a lot of my friends have died.
But I wasn't connected. You know, I knew who he was. Like, you always know who people are, don't you? But I literally didn't come into contact with that thing. You know, yes, mushrooms, acid, cannabis, speed, even oil. Yeah. They were all very, very prevalent where I was growing up. Mushrooms particularly, because when you come from an area with quite a lot of farming areas, you can kind of go and pick your own, But apart from that, even cocaine wasn't really something that came into our world. And actually, you know, people kind of looked at cocaine as, why would you take cocaine? You can take speed. It's like 10 quid, not 50 quid. Do you know what I mean? So even then, I like to think in our local community, we were very thrifty.
Commonly known as Devil's Dandruff, as you know.
We didn't have any cool kind of names like that for
Devil's Dandruff? Oh.
Do you know what the other thing is, though? And this is something that's really, really honest to God. When I was growing up, nobody educated me about drugs at all. Like, nobody.
No, I didn't.
The heroin, I was educated by campaigns, We didn't talk about them in our home. My mum and dad didn't drink. I've got really liberal parents in the fact that They've never judged me for anything I've done. I've never felt like they would disown me or make it painful for me if I didn't meet their grade. You had a different life. I didn't. When I was a kid and I was being awful, my parents welcomed me home. I'm not saying that they welcomed me home without discipline. I'm not saying they welcomed me home without judgment in that context. You know, they weren't happy with my choices, but they always made me feel like home was just mine. Whereas you didn't get that. You were out. You were on the streets. You were in a bedsit. That's horrible. That, I think, might have affected my mental health very differently. I'm not sure that I would have been the same person I am today if I'd had your experiences. And to be honest, I think that you surviving that was pretty impressive, full stop. But when I look back at growing up personally, things like acid, I can remember at 14 somebody bringing acid into the pub. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know it was illegal. I just knew that people would drop it. So, like, when you're in that environment, you're not even making a conscious choice about whether it's legal or illegal. It's just, this is what people are doing. Magic mushrooms, you can buy, you can pick them up.
I know.
They were free. So again, there was no real connection with this is illegal. I can remember a friend of mine getting caught with 8 wraps of speed. And he actually got it dropped in the end to possession. But initially it was possession with intent to supply. Because he was just the guy going and picking them up for the lads on the Friday night. Only at that point did I get told it was a Class B. And it was actually something that could get you 8 years in prison at the time. I had a friend who went to prison for a year for having an ounce of cannabis. 1 ounce. These days, you wouldn't even get more than a fine. But back in our day, you know, the war on drugs was big.
It was
but I had not made that connection.
I hadn't. It took me a while to make that connection.
It just doesn't, you don't think about it. Same with cannabis. I didn't think that something that could be smoked was something that you could get into trouble for. And that's not making an excuse of people in my day who took loads of recreational drugs. But I did not differentiate between anything really. In fact, the one thing that I thought wasn't okay was alcohol. To me, at 18, alcohol was legal. I grew up in a household where mum and dad were teetotal. It's as simple as that. They might have a bit of wine around the table at Christmas. We were all allowed wine. They didn't have an issue if I wanted to drink. I didn't drink alcohol till I was 26. 26 years of age, I'd have a Nuki Brown Ale in the pub. You know, I'd sit with it. I wouldn't even drink it. You know, I was a Diet Coke girl. Or when I found out that you could have blackcurrant and soda for 11 pence, I was a blackcurrant and soda girl. So that was kind of my orientation with legality, illegality. It was alcohol.
Well, I mean, like Saltburn, the alcohol.
Well, you knew because people wouldn't give it you in shops.
Alcohol situation in Saltburn would cause more violence and more aggro. You know, and all the areas around it, you know, there was quite a period of time where there's certain areas like Mask and Saltburn and Newmask would fight against sort of East Cleveland and, you know, but then like the sort of rave scene really kicked in the early sort of 90s and you know, filtering through from the 80s, the acid scene, you know, into the rave
the
scene.
scene was a happy scene. And then
scene. Literally everybody was just...
everybody went from fighting to hugging.
There was a place called Fillmore's in Saltburn, which was known on the map for, you know, trucks and cars and, you know, buses coming from all over the UK would come up to Fillmore's because it was the big beat and it was...
We had Hacienda.
Well, it was like a smaller version of for up in that area and, you know, it was really well known and it does go down in history of being like every area has one.
Yeah, of course.
Like that,
Angels
you know.
in Burnley. Wigan, Pier in Wigan.
And that was leading up to the sort of, you know, the sort of heroin stuff. And I think, you know, I'm almost sure it wasn't so much the parenting, you know, because I can't blame the parents because they struggled for a long time. I remember speaking to a lot of the parents.
My parents don't know.
No, it was just, there was no educated on because the buzz that they were getting from drugs and then heroin comes along. And I see, I've never done heroin. So, you know, but people have described it to me, you know, and like I've taken tramadol for pain relief, you know, and you feel, so imagine
I've
that.
I've had pethidine.
Like,
and pethidine is like, I think a liquid form, like medical of opiate. And all I can tell you is they gave it me without, I had chronic pancreatitis because I was pregnant and my gallbladder had gone septic. So I had to have pethidine because otherwise if I went to like a really bad phase, I could go into early labour, and I already was a special care pregnancy, so the pethidine one, whilst ironically I didn't have any pethidine during the birth, I didn't have any pain relief, just to say that, so I kind of can deal with pain, but chronic gallstones, they used to have to give it me to stop the kind of attack, and they would have this thing where I'd have a card and go into the hospital and they'd just give it me, and then I'd have 45 minutes and somebody had to have to take me home. This particular day they didn't give me the anti-sickness tablet, the anti-sickness injection, it was an injection, so they usually give you one before. And because of that, when they gave me the pethidine, I was sick. Now, I've heard of people saying the first time they take heroin, but what I also know is it was the most pleasant feeling in the world throwing up.
Yeah, that's what.
Now, if something can make throwing up feel like a pretty orgasmic experience, and I was saying to my dad, that is the nicest feeling I've ever had.
I remember sitting around and
Absolutely. I was spangled, and I was in what can only describe when they used to give me pethidine. I felt like I was in the warmest bubble of safety.
Yeah, everything was right.
Everything was beautiful. And you know when people talk about your first E and that connection with the whole new dimension of possibility, and suddenly all the boundaries of intimacy that you feel are awkward or just completely dissolved, and the person that you're just talking to and dancing with on the dance floor just suddenly is like somebody that you just look at and think you're beautiful. It wasn't like that. Because that's like a connected experience, you know? So when you're on E and you're in that kind of connected space, you're sharing it, you're engaged with it, you really feel that connection. With the pethidine, which is meant to mimic those opiate experiences, it's singular.
Yeah.
You're not bothered about any other world. You're not caring about the person next to you. You don't give a shit whether they're enjoying themselves. You are at perfect peace with the self.
Yeah, well, you see, all my friends, you sit on gouching, they call it gouching, you know, where you just be, you know.
But that's the versus the kind of what I would consider recreational drugs, which are to some degree a connector with heroin and opiates, which are actually almost a detractor from connected experience, a singular individual experience where it's all about you. Yeah. And then the behaviours that elicits, it's all about you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of my friends, you know, got into trouble.
Stealing, robbing, taking from the families,
you know, and, you know, quite a few have passed away, you know.
So unnecessary.
Oh, I mean, you know, young men who just, you know, there was young men and women injecting into the, you know, into the thighs, balls, and the feet, you know, because once it's finished, you know, with the sort of, God knows how long they did it for chasing the dragon, you know, and then up the limit, up it, you know, they'd have the foil around with them and they'd unfold it and it'd all be like lines on the foil, they'd already made it all, you know. And I'd just be like, come on, you know, and you have to gradually start moving away from that.
But the thing is, people want you to do it as well. Like, even with all the drugs,
I had a lot of, you know, these, and I don't blame them.
Well, no, because the thing is, when you think you're doing something that's really great, you want your friends to do it with you.
I'd let my friends in, you know, and I'd be doing whatever, and they'd be like getting it out. And in the end, I had to ask them to leave, and I said, no, I can't, you know, I don't want to be associated with that. Because people started associating me with it, you see, because it's Saltburn so small, the heroin sort of epidemic up there became, you know, there's certain people knew who were doing it, and there'd be certain lads who were really good at hiding it, you know, but you know they were doing it. And I never did it, but I was getting associated with these people, not these people, because my friends, but the heroin sort of use. And even my parents, you know, they weren't educated on drugs, so they thought, oh, he's hanging around these heroin addicts, he must be on it. And I used to say to them, I'm telling you now, you would know if I was on heroin because you wouldn't have anything left in the house. Yeah. You know, fair enough, I took a tenner off you every now and then without, you know, and you know, which I got in trouble for, and that was just for buying some beer or some weed or something, you know, like, you know, no excuses on that, but you'd know if I was on heroin because you'd be able to tell. Yeah. You know, and I wouldn't be going to college, Mum, and I wouldn't be, you know, and it was just, I had my issues, but I wasn't to the level that some of my friends got to and put their parents through absolute hell. And they'll actually admit, and they know that they've done that.
It's like I see on Tide and Evans' social media, you know, they've got some friends and connections that maybe have come from a less privileged background and have moved to kind of quite difficult areas because maybe they're involved in the care system or they've got some special orders on them. And on the Snapchat, you'll just see them stood there and there'll be a picture of like beer, Jack Daniels, spliffs. And I can remember when I was a kid that there was this almost ridiculous association with you're cool, you're a bit edgy, you're a bit different, you're a bit down with the kids, and you would kind of have that reputation which you wanted to court. You know, you wanted people to associate you with like being the person with the most tolerance and being the party girl and the party boy, and you were always invited to everything because you know what, you would get as hammered as possible and you'd still be there the next day trying to continue that. It wasn't even about the drugs, it was about saying I belong, I connect, you know, I am in this with you. Because you always, in childhood, in my opinion, certainly when I was growing up, I just felt like I was on the outside of everything. And the thing about recreational drugs like ecstasy is whatever the negatives associated with it, when you're a young person full of worries and anxieties, and you look at yourself and you question your beauty and you think that you're so bad at stuff, when you take something like ecstasy and suddenly you feel like you belong and you're safe and people get you and that you're beautiful, you know, you can look in a mirror and go, wow, I look so beautiful. And it's so obvious why that makes people connect with those kind of drugs. Now, I am the first person to say that, do I want my boys taking drugs? No.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether they would be safe. That's my main problem, because we don't regulate and legalize in the country here. We don't tax it so that we know that the quality is going to be of an acceptable level, even though you can test it or get it off the dark web, and hopefully that will give some TripAdvisor reviews for you. For most people, you don't know what you're getting. Now, it's changed.
Yeah,
when I was a kid on the streets and people were getting drugs, you kind of knew. If you got a strawberry, you kind of knew. If you got a yellow screaming window pane, you kind of knew. If you got your Judge Dredd, you knew, right? Yeah. And even though it was like mild compared to what it is now, there was
I mean, it's like the ecstasy, you know, the doves.
You got your white doves. You got, of course
that was
you did.
It straight across the board. It was safe. You know?
Exactly. And then what's happened now is there's so much dirtiness associated with what goes into those
criminal
things.
activity and the money they want to make, you know, it's down to that, you see.
It scares me.
This is what's going to lead us on into, you know, getting one of our guests on about, you know, the sort of pros of drug legalisation.
Yeah, he's going to come and talk to us in the next couple of weeks.
Like Portugal, we think, but let's go further than that and, you know, bring the crime down, put it into rehab, really tax it, really look after this sort of, you know, because it's just going to keep getting worse and worse, you know. And more people are going to be taking, you know, legal high stuff, which is now illegal, but it's just, you know, the stuff which is just, come on, you know, that's just like stuff from like a Blade Runner movie, you know, some science fiction bollocks, you know. It's just terrible stuff. It's spice, and, you know, awful. I just think that it needs to be really sort of looked at by people that just don't sit on their little castle chairs looking down all those minions.
Thrones.
Yeah.
Castle chairs are thrones. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there.
I'd just like to add though that all the, you know, going back to the Saltburn story, all the bar some of my good friends that did pass away through heroin use, you know, the people that I do and still know who've got through it, you know, bar one or two which are still struggle, I think, you know, and I do know actually, you know,
people grow up.
They've struggled through. They've managed to fight all those demons that they had because of that drug, you know. But the problem is with that, with it, is I've noticed that when you start taking heroin, some of the people I've met, the brains haven't aged until the day that they stop taking it.
Yeah.
So say they've been doing it for 20 years and they started when they were 18, you know, they're like, you know, coming up to say 28, 30, 48, whatever, 45, you know what I mean? So 15, 20 years. Still quite similar age in the head.
Yeah.
You know, nothing, it's like a...
Peter Pan.
Yeah. It's like they've been ripped away from the planet and put back again, you know, like, but in an older body, because, you know, this it's been about heroin for all that time. But yeah, big respect for those friends of mine that managed to kick all those demons out, because I tell you what, watching from when I was a young man growing up and seeing it all around me, it must have been difficult for their own families. I couldn't ever even think what it was like to be going through that, you know.
It blows my mind though that people don't talk about it, honestly. I mean, in the media it's rife, you know, drug use is rife. I mean, I don't take any drugs, you don't take any drugs, and we haven't done for a very long time, you know, because one, I had children and there was absolutely no way that I was gonna live a life that could affect them negatively. But I also genuinely, when I look back, think it was just that I didn't even think about it. I didn't know anything about it. It's just what we did.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I think that we educate kids in such a different way. Like, I talk to my boys about it all the time. I say, if you're ever contemplating taking drugs, you need to talk to me about it. You need to have that conversation, because I cannot control what they do outside of my home, but I can control what they know about what they do outside my home. And that really still, for most mums and dads, I think will play on our minds, particularly because lots of people didn't take drugs. You know, my other assumption when I was growing up, because I came from such a small place and everybody just did recreational drugs. It was just our social life.
I was the same.
I didn't know that people didn't do it. So I did never, when I meet people, and I think that being a psychologist, I have to be honest about who I am. I don't pretend that I've lived a life where I've just been perfect. In fact, probably my neuroses and my difficulties have created who I am. Yeah. And I'm kind of okay with that. But I live a very clean life now. I'm vegetarian, have been for a very, very long time. Yep. You know, I'm very connected with nature. I do these things that I feel make me healthier and happier than I was when I was younger. You know, I'm so much more happy as an adult who's developed, who doesn't have that kind of influence in my life. But it's made me see the fact that often people just start taking drugs because they don't even think there's a choice. It just seems like the most normal thing in the world to do. And the only way that people can start having those conversations and connections with people and developing and changing is through conversation and permission. Absolutely. Yesterday, there was a girl who rang up the show and she said that she was smoking this ridiculous amount of weed every single day to self-medicate. And it was the first time she's like got in touch and spoken about it. And you're like, that's because she thinks if she tells people, she's going to be in trouble, or if she tells people, she's going to get judged. And in society, this silence where loads of people have taken drugs, right? But they're never going to tell you because they always want to look like they have done it better and they have created a life that's more charming than yours. But I'm not like that. I'm like, my life was dirty and broken at times and I messed up and I didn't know where I was going. But then I got myself together. I started working. I've totally committed to working with young people and educating young people. Then I've moved on to the media. If I'm not willing to be honest about my experiences, and how on earth can I expect my clients and people who get in touch with me on TV to be honest about theirs? Nobody's perfect. Drugs affected my life. They've affected pretty much every adult that I've ever met's life. And for those who've not done it, well, for the grace of God, go you, because it's very little about choice spaces there. It's usually about opportunity, because I guarantee if you've been in a group with peers and they're doing something and you're not going to be mates with them for much longer. So what are you going to do? You're going to choose your peers and your friendships and your connections and your commitments to them, which matter, or are you going to go, no, I'm not going to do that? And the truth is, bar on very many occasions like you've had, such as saying no to heroin, fair comment, that's a choice that you kind of make on a lifestyle level. The rest of it, you just do what your mates are going to do. Until suddenly you find yourself realizing that that's not who you are. And going back to what we said at the very, very beginning, definitely one of the reasons why we let go of all those relationships that now have great meaning to us is because you have to make a choice. What is your choice going to be? Are you going to carry on doing that? Are you going to carry on smoking weed till you're 25, 30? Are you going to carry on getting high every weekend because that's what your friends do? No, you're not, because you can't live the life that we're living now without giving all those things up, right?
Absolutely true.
But you put some safe distance in between you. You realise that, hey, I'm never going to be that person again. I don't want to. You know, I've done it. I'm far too old. You know, I'm grown. I've developed in a sense where I can have relationships like I have with you, based on love and connection and authenticity, and we don't need anything to have that experience together. I've got my children who literally are an extension of me and make me feel so valued. I know I'm the most important person in the world for those boys. I know I am the most important person in the world for those boys. That means I have great meaning. I don't need anything recreational to make me be reminded that I have possibilities and potentials and to help me see things in a different way. I don't need to see things in a different way. Everything that I see now is clear and it has great meaning. So now when I think about the relationships, I can return to those people and it doesn't matter where they are, because nothing of their choice is going to influence mine. But that's why that distance has had such importance, just as much as it's also created, as you said, loss and nostalgia. Yeah. So the reason you are able to now think, I want to reconnect with these people, is less about where they are and all about where you are.
Yeah. I've said I had this idea of like, I'd love to like get all these people that I knew just back together. Just get this, you know, like you used to do at school.
Yeah.
Like, take a massive photo, like a huge photo, you know, because that's the way my brain thinks about sort of, you know, media elements and, you know, digital and photography and film, you know. But then I thought I'd love to make, because of this situation must have happened in so many different towns.
Yeah, you want to tell stories.
Yeah, you know, and
yeah, if you're somebody who's taken heroin and you've been a dependent, we would love to hear from you, and you've kind of got your life back together. Because I think that's really important. Like, not that we have an issue with people who are dependent on heroin now, you know, everybody has their own issues. But if you're somebody who's maybe transversed that experience of going from being a dependent to being completely clean, please get in touch with us, because at the end of the day, we would love to hear your story, because we're telling it from an observer's point of view. Right, okay, well, I reckon that's the next one done, isn't it?
I think so,
Because
yeah.
if we don't, we're just going to carry on going on and go on to a completely different subject.
Yeah.
Whereas today we've actually managed pretty much to stick to talking about impact of drugs, both on self and on others, and also touching on a little bit about friendship and loss from when we were younger.
Yes.
And one of our listeners got in touch and actually said, please can you write a description of what the podcast is going to be on so that they don't just have to listen if they aren't necessarily interested to the content. It's a very good point. Please still throw things at us. And also it's been really nice people getting in touch with us and saying, look, can you cover A, B and C? We want you to carry on doing that because it really makes a difference to make sure that whatever we're talking about content-wise is of interest to you. We hope you've enjoyed it today. It's quite strange for me because this is quite personal and it's not necessarily a platform that I ordinarily discuss my feelings on. Obviously, I did Under the Skin with Russell Brand and I was very honest about my hedonistic past, but it does feel a bit risky me doing it. But in the same context, I hope that that means that the conversations that you guys are having at home are going to be a little bit more open, authentic, and you're going to be a little bit more brave about who you are, whether you were perfect and peaches and cream or a little bit cracked and dirty like I was. Anyway, join us next week for Making Sense of It, and we may have a guest next time, which is slightly exciting. Also, hopefully I'll have been healed from this horrendous cold that I've got, which is why I sound like a 75-year-old heavy smoking male.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also follow me on my channels, Emma Kenny TV.